Now we're going to talk about the functions associated with dictionaries. Just like lists, dictionaries are objects which have methods that can run on them. We're going to go over some of the most commonly used methods. We're going to look at the most commonly used methods, but you should definitely look here for a full list or at the Python API. Here at the top, I created a dictionary called fruit with which we'll explore some functions. I'll just print it down here again so that we can see it. The first thing we might want to do with a dictionary is to determine its length. When we refer to the length of a dictionary, we mean how many unique keys are present in the dictionary. In order to retrieve the length of a dictionary, we use the len function just as we do with lists. So to get the length of my dictionary, I would type in the function len, and then inside of the parentheses I would put the name of my dictionary. And as we see, there are 3 items in my dictionary. We have banana, grape, and apple. The next thing we might want to do with a dictionary is get a value. We saw already before that if we know the keys in our dictionary, that we can access the values in this manner. However, if we were to try to retrieve a key that doesn't exist, we see that we get an error. Luckily, there's another way to retrieve values that protects us from these errors, and that is called the get method. In order to use the get method, we write the dictionary name, and then a period, and then the method name get, and then in parentheses, we would write the key that we want to attempt to get. Now in the case that the key exists, as with banana, it returns the value associated with the key. But in the case that the key doesn't exist, we see that the method returns nothing, which is much more elegant than the error that we got before when we tried to access a key that doesn't exist. The next thing we might want to do with a dictionary is to get all the keys. As we saw before, if we know the keys that are present in a dictionary, it's very easy to access the information that's stored inside of it. But if we don't, it's much more difficult. Conveniently, there is a keys method that extracts all of the keys from a given dictionary. When we call this method, it returns a list that contains all of the keys. So I'm going to create a new variable, fruit keys, and then I'm going to call the keys method. So as before, we write the dictionary name, and then a period, and then keys, and an open parenthesis and a closed parenthesis. Now, inside of the variable fruit keys, we have a list containing all of the keys from our dictionary. So we can print fruit keys, and we see that we have banana, grape, and apple. It's important to note that while these keys are in the order in which I entered them into the dictionary, dictionaries are unordered, and so the keys won't necessarily be returned in the same order in which they were inputted into the dictionary. Just like it was useful to get a list of all of the keys in the dictionary, it could also be useful to get a list of all of the values. For that, we have the values method, and it's used much in the same way that the keys method is used. So again, I'm going to create another variable, and then I'm going to write my dictionary name and a period, and call the values method. Now, if I print color, we see that I indeed get all of the values that were present in my dictionary. Sometimes we want to get an item from the dictionary, process it in some way, and then remove it. So one way to do that would indeed be to get the item, do the processing, and then delete the item from the dictionary. However, there's a separate function that does both of these things in one step. This function is called the pop function. The pop function will return the value associated with the key I ask it for. So I'm going to create a variable called item, and then I'm going to call the pop function. So as before, we write our dictionary name, and then pop, and then I'm going to call it with the key grape. Now I can print item, and we see that item is indeed storing the value that's associated with grape. And if we print our dictionary again, we see that the key value pair grape and green was indeed removed from the dictionary. So pop returns the value that's associated with the key that we send it, and then it removes that key value pair from the dictionary. If an invalid key is sent as a parameter to pop, then an error will be raised. Sometimes we may want to remove an item and process it, but we don't know or maybe don't care which item that is. For that, we have the pop item method. The pop item method will return a random key value pair. So we are going to create another variable, and then we're going to call the pop item method. Now we can print our item. We don't know what it is yet. And we see that it happens to be the key value pair, banana and yellow. And as with the pop method, the pop item method also removes the item from the list. So if we were to print our dictionary one more time, we'll see that now only the apple red key value pair remains. That was a brief introduction to some of the functions that are associated with dictionaries. We saw that we have the get method, which retrieves values associated with the keys that we send, and if we send it an invalid key, it safely returns nothing. We also saw the keys and the values method, which respectively return a list of the keys and a list of the values. And we also looked at the pop and the pop item methods, which return an item from our dictionary and then subsequently removes it from the dictionary. And as I mentioned before, there are many more useful functions that you can read about on the API or directly through the shell when looking at the help method for the dictionary.